be a lore-heavy game master versus a lore-light game master is something I'd like to talk about today on the lore of Braunhaven. So, there's two types of game masters. There are those that are lore-heavy, there are those that are lore-light. I admit that I am a lore-heavy game master. Everything in the world actually truly depends on the lore of the world. And this goes down to even the small details. Anything like, for instance, in Braunhaven, a small detail is that the halflings of the Glaucian Empire have created something called Shire Smoke, and it is half pipeweed and half Ereboscian tobacco. You can find these sold in essentially 1 ounce pack, little leather pouches in nearly every inn in the Glaucian Empire. It has become a very popular item for the people that live in the Empire. And this is a small detail. It's a fact of life. And it is these small details that actually breathe life into a world. And there are a lot of people that don't feel that the small details matter. Those people are wrong. Just flat out. It's not an opinion. They're just wrong. The reason why Star Wars was such a cinematic hit was because of the lore, because of the minor small details, because every piece of technology seemed like it was well used. This is why people love the Star Wars movies or the lore in Star Wars so much. And so the same thing holds true for your games. Very small details make the world alive. They can also add effect to the players themselves. And what I mean by that is that there should always be a sense to the players, not the character. Well, the characters should automatically feel this way, but to the players themselves, that regardless of whether or not they take action in any particular thing, the world is continuing to evolve around them with or without them. The world doesn't care that they are existing in it. The world doesn't care that they may or may not be heroes. The world will continue to evolve whether they do something or not. And there are events that are happening just beyond their point of vision that they may hear about that can actually affect the region. And so lore elements are very, very important, at least to me. I find game masters that have next to no lore, or players that like next to no lore, to be very boring players and very boring game masters. It is the entire reason of living in these worlds for that short amount of time in a game session is why the lore exists. That's what makes the entire world be what it is. And so lore elements can be conveyed in a number of ways. They can be conveyed by rumors, news, or simple player character observation. In most games, irregardless, that's not really a word. Regardless of the genre that you're playing in, rumors can be found almost anywhere. From anywhere from the bartender, which are generally good sources of rumors, half of them not being true, to random people that meet on the street, or to the bard that's busking on the street corner, or to the drug dealer that's selling in an alleyway of a starport. Rumors can be achieved in any location, in any genre. The other one is news. Most commonly, news is going to be a way of conveying lore that is going on around the characters or in the general vicinity or world that the characters are inhabiting. And you're going to find that usually in modern games or in science fiction games. But that doesn't mean that you can't have that kind of thing in fantasy games. Broadsheets in a sufficiently large enough city or town, they may have somebody that is putting out broadsheets, taking on a journalist bent, and basically the town crier can be putting out news for uh, whatever is going on for the past week. Usually, unusual in a fantasy setting that you're going to have daily broadsheets, but maybe weekly is a possibility. If it's a major, huge city, something along the size of like ancient Rome, then yes, they might have daily criers, and these criers may only be telling news about one particular neighborhood or district of the city, and may not have a whole lot of information about what's going on in another borough. But news is another way of doing this. And then the last way is just simple character observation. They may this can especially be true if there is some kind of major event that the lore is pointing to, and the characters may observe something that is usually out of the ordinary. Or in another example, is it might be a quirk of the actual region that they're in. Maybe the common people here do something or act in a different way than you would see in surrounding areas, and so that can actually be a ticket into uh, giving a little bit of lore about where the characters are currently existing. So lore elements are basically important to in order to convey much larger impending events. For example, if there is a war looming on the horizon in the near future, uh, these lore the lore that's given out is probably going to be in pieces showing particular events that are leading up to that. It could be, there was an insurrection in a town, or there was a small civil war, or what have you. And now there are refugees that are moving, and the why they are moving and why these small events happened can lead into why this larger war is coming. A war doesn't just happen. There are events, usually anywhere from 2 months to 2 years in advance of that, that cause it to lead up to that situation. Uh, these rumors that people get are probably going to be leading them in that direction as to why this war is looming on the horizon. Now, there are a couple of different types of players. There are, of course, those that like the lore, and then there are those that don't. They are showing up because what they really want from the game master is they want the game master to move the characters from basically one combat encounter to the next. They're not interested in the lore. These are players that usually find exploration to be quite boring. They have absolutely no desire to do any of the social pillar. They usually are rather quiet during role play scenarios, and all they want to do is show up and kill monsters. And it's a very boring way to play. But I mean, they like what they like. That's what it is. So the fact of the matter is that I'm here to tell you that as a game master, it's a double-edged sword, and it's between these two play styles, you're not going to win. There's absolutely nothing that you can do to win. The real truth of the matter is is that not every player is going to be suited for every table. That's just life. It is, just how it is. They're not going to mesh with another player's playstyle. They're not going to like the lore. However that may be. You may not like their playstyle. I generally, you can play your character however you want. I don't care. I'm here to run a game. But the players, especially if they're overly dramatic, can kind of nitpick one another about these different playstyles. Some players, some of these players are going to try to hold it as a threat to you, that they'll leave the game unless you either stop doing what they call lore dumps, or that they neither wanted nor were asked for, or they're going to leave the table. Other players, maybe, I want more combat, and you're either going to provide it or I'm going to leave the table. That's fine. I'm sorry, but that's an empty threat. Go ahead and leave. Period. Quit the game. I don't care. Um, you, as the game master, have enough on your plate in running the games, prepping the games, and either creating or reading through the lore that exists in order to adequately run that game, that you do not need to put up with that kind of behavior. So let them leave. Just tell them point blank. If you don't like it, there's the door. Go. It's just simply not your job to force people to stay at your table. And here's the real truth in this, is that if they leave, the thing that they cannot conceive of, because they are the hero in their own story, of course. The thing that they can't conceive of is that there are a multitude of other players out there that would enjoy taking that slot at your table and would enjoy however your game mastering style is. So go, let them leave. You can find another player. And this is also another perfect example of showing the player characters and the players themselves that the world will continue to evolve without them. Things are going to happen whether they are a part of it or not. That's not to say that, especially in a heroic campaign, the players, their actions should have major drastic effects on the world that they are inhabiting. But at the same time, if they don't act, there's nothing that's going to suddenly say that event wasn't going, it just simply won't happen because the players weren't there. No, it's happening. If they didn't show up to intervene and prevent a major war from breaking out, the war's going to break out. And that's just, how it is. So the other types of players, they may take all the lore that you give them, and then they make incorrect assumptions based on that lore. They take it for whatever reason in a wildly different direction, and then they can feel, upset that their assumptions were completely wrong, and that's not how the event played out, or that's not how the lore actually came to be. On that side, again, as the game master, it's not your job to change the lore or to alter events because they made incorrect assumptions. It is what it is. And they may, again, threaten to leave the table because they made an incorrect assumption, and that's somehow your fault. Let them leave. That's fine. They can go. You can find other players that will fill that slot, and they won't make incorrect assumptions or assume that them being wrong is somehow your fault. Don't take that on yourself. That is not something you need to do. So pretty much in closing, you need to stand up for yourself. You need to stand up for the lore. And if you have players that are wanting to exit the game because you have a detailed world full of lore and major events, then I guess they can just leave. Because one of two things is going to happen. If they don't like the lore, then they'll end up leaving. If they do like the lore but make incorrect assumptions, they may end up leaving. And there is a third example that, in the example of the war, if you didn't do the lore, and the war suddenly breaks out, you will have players that will feel blindsided. So on the one side, you have them saying, well, we don't like the lore dumps, but now there's a major war. And then on the other side, you'll have players that didn't get any lore at all because you were told to not do a lore dump. And they're going to suddenly say, well, how is it that a war break out? Why weren't we aware that this was a possibility? I don't understand. It's a double-edged sword. You're never going to win. So my takeaway from this is that you need to stand up for you and your games. And if you have those types of players and they're threatening you, let them leave. You can find other players. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.